What's that?
And
Friends. No,
friends?
yeah. It will be available. It'll have a nice British price tag on it, too.
Right.
Welcome to the Light Up Lounge. Welcome back. It's Wednesday. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Wherever you're joining us from, welcome back to the Light 'em Up Lounge. Welcome back to another inspiring and enlightening conversation and a good chat with a dear fellow and an icon of the industry. It's a privilege and a pleasure to welcome back Pete Johnson from Tatuaje Cigars. And before we went live, we were just chatting a little bit about kind of the last time that we did this together here at the lounge under very, very different circumstances and challenges with lockdowns and all the craziness that was going on a couple of years back. But the wonderful thing is we're still here. You are still here. The community and the cigar family came closer together. And yeah, it's been an exciting journey ever since. So Pete, there's plenty to talk about in regards to your exciting journey and the anniversaries that you're celebrating this year. I'm curious to hear about all the new evolutions and developments ever since we last spoke. And without further ado, welcome back. Welcome to Light 'em Up Lounge. And thanks for taking the time and joining us today, Pete.
No, thanks for having me. Thanks for welcoming me on this great platform that you have. And I hope you have some good questions. I got a lot of answers.
I certainly hope so. Well, before we kick things off, Pete, first of all, I would love to invite everybody to chime in and ask questions as well. For you guys here at the lounge, your friends, family, regulars, you know the spiel anyways, so make yourselves heard, chime in, and please raise your hand or put your questions in the chat box. I'd love to bring them all in and share them with Pete. And the same for all of you guys watching over on Facebook. Just put your thoughts and questions into the comments, please. I'm always checking, always following the live stream so we can forward them.
Reinhardt, I have an icebreaker question if I'm allowed already to kick it off.
Please, there you go. Chime in, buddy.
All right. Hey, Pete, are you going to be at PCA this year?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay, well, good, because I was told that apparently I may be able to pull off an impersonation. What do you think? If I do, you can't see my tattoos, what can I do? Maybe?
I'll see if you're there at the show. I'll see you there.
I'll be there. I'll be there for sure. But
I'm just
I'll
a little older and grayer than you, though.
I don't know about that, pal. I think this camera and the lighting may be doing me some justice. So I think I may have you there. But look forward to seeing you there.
Notes.
All right, absolutely. Look forward to it.
Right on, bro.
Pete, I think what we should probably do also is like set up a little band or something at the PCA and just get all these crazy musicians from the industry together and do an impromptu live.
Yeah, my band days are over. My band days are over. I actually I was asked by my old bandmates to get together to do a show at the Roxy in Los Angeles this year, and I told them that I needed more time. So maybe next year, but for this year, and being the 20th anniversary of the company, I'm just too busy to get back and forth to Los Angeles to have rehearsals. I
can imagine. Well, let's jump a bit back in time, Pete. In the old days, if you weren't of Latin American origin or specifically of Cuban heritage, I believe you wouldn't be considered a trustworthy cigar manufacturer until Pete Johnson came along. And
yeah, the good thing is I never claimed to be a cigar manufacturer. I've always professed that I'm a cigar designer. and I rely on a great house to sew all those cigars up for me. And pick the patterns, make the material, make the patterns, pick the materials, but I rely on professionals to sew it up for me. So I have to give the credit where credit's due. The cigar manufacturers and really the guys that are sitting on the table every day of the week, 8 hours a day rolling cigars, they're the ones making the magic. We're just the ones out there with our face on everything.
That's an excellent point, but even that was kind of a novelty when you came up with Tatuaje Cigars and took the industry by storm. I mean, I remember George Brightman calling you the poster child of the boom of the 90s once. And he also said you were kind of the bell cow for gringos in the business, which I thought was hilarious. And by the way, George sends his regards. He would love to be here with us today. I just had him on the phone a bit earlier, but he's reading stuff at Capital Cigar, so he sends his regards. But I thought he had an excellent point there. And indeed, you changed certain pathways of the industry and probably ruffled a few of the preconceived notions. In retrospect, how does that feel?
I guess it feels okay. I will tell you that when I started showing up at the trade shows in the early 90s, a lot of people didn't give me the time of day because I was the only guy with tattoos on the trade show floor walking around. But I met this guy named George Brightman, and he introduced me to everybody. And I was lucky enough that I was brave enough to talk to my heroes in the industry, like Carlos Sr. or Carlito or, the Padron family. When I started in the industry, people in Los Angeles didn't even know about the Padron family because that was kind of a Miami thing. They were well known in Nicaragua, obviously in Honduras, making cigars, but the West Coast never really heard of Padron because Nicaraguan cigars weren't back on the market really yet until 1992, 93. And the first ones that we saw were the most historic ones, like Hoy de Nicaragua. Mm-hmm. So I was just lucky that I had good people around me that knew that I was passionate about the industry and just kept on introducing me to the next person and the next person.
When you came out with Tatuaje in 2003, it was kind of the tail end, or rather already the bust after the boom, right? You've entered the market with a comparatively high price point, an obscure name, or at least an unfamiliar concept to the industry at this point. What do you feel were some of the ingredients for the success that you cooked up with Tatuaje in those early days?
Well, I don't think there were many ingredients to success right away because, again, it was when no one was making new cigars. I decided to make the cigars in Miami, Florida. The cigars were expensive for that time, actually, not anymore. And it was with a brand name that no one could pronounce unless you were Spanish or of Latin descent. So people had a really hard time with the branding. It took me a long time for people to recognize the brand. I think Cigar Aficionado recognized it early on as something new and creative, but it took the consumer base probably 3-4 years to really latch onto it. Here it is 20 years later, and we still have new people coming into the mix and new clients, new retailers, new consumers. So even after 20 years, it's nice to see that there's potential for growth.
That's a very good point. And what's interesting is I feel that very early on and now more than ever, you managed to build such a strong following around the brand and that whole cult, one could possibly say, and Tatuaje for a lot of people then became kind of a role model, I guess, in the industry of building such a strong community, and you were one of the first brands to do that very successfully, I feel. Still to this day, I believe Saints and Sinners is still ongoing, right?
13 years this year.
So 10 years, you said, for Saints and Sinners?
No, 13 for Saints and Sinners.
13, sorry. So
yeah, so this is our 13th year for Saints and Sinners.
20 for Tatuaje, 30 for you in the industry. You mentioned that personal element. Where do you feel that people could cling on to, or people saw something different, felt that this was just something that they were truly passionate about and wanted to get behind and follow the brand?
Well, let me go back to the last question just for a brief note. The one thing that I think was probably the key to the success of the brand was not the name, obviously, was not the price point, was the fact that we actually had a good cigar. And I had seen so many cigar companies fail during the boom because they came out, and there's people in this room that were around during that time. People came out with their first cigar and they were using banana leaves inside the cigar and trying to fool the consumer base. The one thing that I relied on was my palate. That's it. Was, okay, these cigars are made for me. The bonus is when other people want to enjoy them with me, but first and foremost, I have to love them. And I'm not going to put something out if I don't absolutely love it. So that's been my success over the last 20 years, because I've never put out a cigar I question. It's never been about just put it out because we could sell it. It's always been about, I have to have truth behind the marketing of it, and there's no truth if I can't believe in the product. So that's that point. Now you're going to have to refresh the question because I forgot it completely.
I think it very much relates to what you just said, and that is why people saw something in the brand initially, and how you managed to very successfully, as one of the first brands, build such a loyal following behind Tatuaje.
I think more than anything is that I'm really open. I believe, I mean, we have great people in this room like Jose. He understands who I am as a person. I believe that I follow in the path of the great people before me because they were welcoming to me. So I try to do the same thing to people that want to come up and have questions about my product. I've always been very open about what goes into the cigar, who makes it, what we, how long the tobacco ages before we put the cigars together, how long they sit in the cold room before we put the cigars out. I've always been very open and honest with that, and very approachable. So there was never a question whether or not people could walk up to me and say, hey, I'm going to ask you the hardest question in the world, because to me, there's no hard questions, because I will answer every one of them.
Also, going back to what you said just earlier, it's interesting when you mentioned that first you have to love the cigar and you have to believe in it. Every now and then on the show, we talk about this idea, like certain people make a cigar because they see opportunity and probably see either a trend in the industry or maybe a lack of something, a product that they're missing in the marketplace. So they try to go after it and produce something because people will eventually ask for it or want it. Yet you say, no. First, I gotta love the cigar. And if they will come, as they say.
The new cigars that come into the portfolio are not because we're looking to fill a void in the market. We're actually looking to fill a void in our own portfolio for us to enjoy. So when a new cigar gets introduced into the portfolio, it's usually because we're missing it for us to smoke first. I'll give you a good example though. The Grand Coho Nu that we make here in the United States, and it does travel to overseas. It's a big 60 ring gauge. It's 6.5 by 60. It's not typically a cigar that I would make, but I had the mold in the factory in Miami, and it just happened that a friend of mine asked me for a 60 ring gauge. And I told him that I was a traditionalist when it came to Cuban cigars. And if Cuba wasn't going to do it, I'm not going to do it either. And someone had sent me a cigar from a custom roller in Havana. And it happened to be a 5 by 60. So I latched on to that. I said, well, if they're going to do it, I'm going to beat them to the punch. And I came out with the Grand Cohonu. To this day, it's never been a cigar that I smoke a lot of until I met this gentleman that's on the screen also, Lawrence Davis. I really didn't smoke a lot of 60 ring gauges. And I started hanging out with him. And the next thing you know, I'm smoking a lot of 60 ring gauges. And I found them to be really enjoyable. And it actually gave me a challenge to try to make them even more flavorful and even more better than I'm already doing. Because it's always been pointed out to me that there's no way you can get a flavorful cigar in a 60 ring gauge. And I said, I think I've done it, but I'm going to prove you wrong and try to do it better.
I want to deep dive a little bit on the point that you made regarding the portfolio. It's a very interesting one, and especially with 20 years of history for a brand, you go through different stages and phases, also in terms of your portfolio. You keep on building, you add new stuff. There might be the rare limited edition here or there, regionals. At what point in your career did you feel now a certain strategic thinking kicked in as to how you want to structure the portfolio? Did you have that in the beginning, or was that an evolution over time?
No, I really just wanted to make sizes that I was in love with. And that doesn't always work, because there's a lot of times the sizes that I love aren't popular. So I continue to make them to try to, I hate to say, to use these words, but to almost force feed people. No, trust me, you're going to like it. It's a great size. You're just missing out. Like, not everything has to be a 6x50 Toro. Like, we got into this rut where everything had to be a certain typical size. And I would come out with a Cervantes, a 6.5x42, or a Cazadorian, a 6 3/8 by 43. And people would be like, yeah, but that's not really, that cool of a cigar. I go, trust me, smoke it once and you'll figure out that's a cool cigar, because you're going to get a ton of flavor out of these smaller ring gauges that you don't even realize. And that's why we make so many Leguito number ones or Leguito number two sizes. Lancero is what we call them in the United States, obviously. We like those sizes to smoke, but it's really not what's hip and popular right now.
Well, I have a follow-up question on that, but first of all, I want to go back to the other one. Like, now, when you mentioned you're trying to fill certain voids in the portfolio, there is more of a strategic thinking behind that as well, where you see certain aspects we want to cover, that we want to go into, right?
Yeah, a couple. Like, I'm a fan of short robustos, and we have a bunch of 4x50s, but sometimes I don't have enough time for a 4x50, so we're actually coming out with a 3.5x50 in the Atelier line. And we have this weird thing that every time a dog passes in our family, we make a cigar to pay tribute to that dog, so it always stays within the line, regardless of whether it sells good or not. It will always be in the portfolio. And her name was Roxy, is my brother's dog. And she was tiny. And she had two different shades of color, like white and dark, during the day. And she would change colors during the night. So we're doing a split box of 3.5x50s. You want to, for reference, a Partagas D6. But in the Atelier line, you have the Sancti Spiritus in the top row. And the second row will be the Atelier Maduro, which we actually took off the market, but we're bringing it back with that line. So, yeah, there's always that. I'd like to try to fit every seat. Like we always say, there's a seat for every ass and a price point for every wallet. And like some of the things we've come out with this the last few years have been on a price point that are not for everybody's wallet, but we try to put the quality behind it just as much as we do for many other cigar. That's our biggest problem, is that the care that goes into our $4 cigar is the same care that goes into our $85 cigar. It's we believe that each one of them is special, and we want to make sure that no matter what your barrier of entry is, that you're going to have an enjoyable time regardless.
Yeah.
Because an $85 cigar is not for everybody, but the $4 cigar might be the super premium for someone. So you need to make sure that they're smoking something that they can enjoy in their range.
It's clearly a matter of respect and certain values that you hold dear, and where you say this is unconditional, and we'll never step below that. And people will ultimately appreciate that long term, and it certainly pays off. Certain manufacturers or brand owners over the years grow an extensive portfolio with God knows how many SKUs, so many different facings in the brand. The retailers in particular will attest that it's always a matter of real estate and providing shelf space, finding a balance there. How do you think about either discontinuing certain brands, and on the other hand, I think over the past couple of years, you've been a stellar example of revitalizing some brands of the past, or probably some blends and brands that you had discontinued or at least put on hiatus for a little bit.
Yeah, it's always been tough for me to let go of something. In the early days, it was always about, if we make it, we're going to continue to make it no matter how much it sells, because we made it for a reason. And that was for us. But eventually, our warehouse gets a little too full, and we run out of space because we have new products coming. So we have to make hard choices, and we've had to actually let go of some brands in the past, but not let go of them completely. We still find ways to keep the trademarks alive with samplers and cigars inside samplers. Like La Riqueza is a great circumstance. It's a blend we still make in a Lancero sampler, but we don't make it for a permanent line anymore. Last year, we decided to put out a cigar under the La Riqueza name, but traditionally not the same blend as La Riqueza was originally, just because we want to keep the brand alive. Yeah, it's always tough to let things go. We had to make some hard choices this year. We cut out 22 facings, mainly because they weren't performing anymore, and we needed the space for other things we had coming in. We work in a very small, confined space, so we're moving product very quickly out of Nicaragua into Miami, and if I have the ability to ship it from Miami to the retail stores, I do that, and then the rest of it goes to our Los Angeles warehouse, which is fairly small, and we ship the rest of it out of there. Sometimes we had to make choices of cutting lines to concentrate more on particular other cigars that came out of the same rolling group. We were having a problem with the tattoo line. We couldn't get enough product, but we were also making the El Suelo and the Trocadero line with those same rollers. So we decided to cut the El Suelo and the Trocadero to concentrate on tattoo. Sometimes those circumstances come up to where we have to make those tough choices, but we always keep them on the shelf behind us, but we never completely get rid of them.
And then on top of that, very interesting factor. This is actually something I'm hearing for the first time, that you would say you have to shift production because you have a certain group of rollers focusing on line A, whereas they also need to make line B and C, and then you probably have to put them aside for a certain moment in time.
Yeah, I mean, in Nicaragua, so I'll give you a little breakdown of the factories. So in Miami, we have 12 rollers.
Mm-hmm.
It's a small factory. We make mostly for U.S. consumption. On the occasion, you have someone that wants to import cigars from the U.S. to a different country. Lawrence from Souder has 4 of them, actually, that we make especially for the UK, and actually he's holding an exclusive on the product at this moment. The factory, there's 2 factories in Nicaragua. One's Tabacalera Cubana, which is where we make things like the tattoos, the El Suelos, the Trocaderos. the 5-packs like the Surrogate Cracker Crumbs and things like that. That's a smaller factory also, so we have to make sure that we're utilizing those rollers to make certain products, because when I was trying to spread them thin, I had to wait too long in between production. So that's why I said focus on tattoo. Currently, we're out of tattoos in inventory, so we're waiting for hopefully a nice wave to come up soon. But then you have the My Father factory, which is the big factory. And that's a little easier to manage because they're producing about 100,000 cigars a day. You're talking about 300 pairs of rollers. You have a lot of moving parts, but you're able to dedicate, certain brands within certain rolling groups, and they don't really cross over too much.
Besides, then you have the raw material aspect, right? Because not all the tobaccos will be as readily available, or you have certain fluctuations there, and ultimately you're working with a product from Mother Nature.
Yeah, I mean, if I told Jaime and Pepin that I only wanted to make one cigar, they would look at me and say, but we have all this other tobacco that we need to use. So there's ways of using those other tobaccos to make other brands, and that's where you see the vast portfolio between just myself and the Garcias. There's a big, vast portfolio, but there's a reason, because there are tobaccos from different farms, there are different seed varietals from different farms, there are different regions, and you need to be able to utilize that tobacco for something. Otherwise, you might as well chop it up, top it with flavoring, and sell it to someone in the Dominican that's making, machine-made cigars. Sorry, that's not a dig against the Dominican. They just happen to make a lot of machine-made cigars for flavored companies. So I apologize to anybody from the Dominican. Jose, I apologize for that.
It's an interesting point, though, and an important one, where you see a difference in just being a brand owner and trying to get the filet mignons from on the tobacco side.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're vertically integrated and you have to do everything from A to Z and utilize everything from A to Z, that's a different ball game, right?
Yeah. Again, I go back to the Jaime and Pepin would kill me if I told them I only wanted the filet mignon every time, because you need to use every part of the cow.
Very true.
Yeah. I mean, like, if you think about it, I'll use reference for what Jose does. Opus X is the filet mignon. He can only make so much of it per year. So, like, he's got to rely on all those other parts of the cow to make all those other lines. It's very important for a factory to have those choices. Otherwise, you might as well just go back to buying tobacco. And not every grower is always going to sell you the filet mignon. And sometimes some of those growers might even tell you they're selling you the filet mignon. And if you don't know what you're doing, you're buying something that's the butt end of the cow, and it's not as good as the filet.
Pete, how do you feel that landscape has changed, in particular over the past couple of years? There was quite a bit of uncertainty as to which direction the industry would take during COVID. At the beginning, everybody was scared. There was quite a dip, but then a resurgence, and the industry spiked and still is kind of in that boom phase where cigars are in high demand and raw material is in short supply. How do you feel about those trends and those ups and downs, and what have you seen over the past couple of years in regards to the supply and demand issues?
I mean, the supply and the demand during the pandemic was tough because we had to deal with a shortage of people working in the factory. We never ran into a problem with a shortage of tobacco. Jaime and Pepin have been growing a lot of tobacco over the years, including now a 400 acre farm in Honduras, which is being added to the portfolio very soon. So they're growing a lot of raw material for us to utilize. That was never the problem. It was always the issue of the manpower. And eventually, during the exodus of people leaving the countries in Central America to come to the United States, that ended up being another problem, because multiple factories were losing talented people because they wanted to come to the United States to live the American dream. Obviously, when the border completely shut down, a lot of those people had to make a U-turn and go back to their home countries, and a lot of those people came back. And that's where we're seeing production getting into flow better, because we have the workforce that can make the product. But there was a struggle for a while where we were relying on a smaller team to make X amount of product. With the demand being so high, we were on back order constantly. We're still on back order with a lot of product, but we're getting a flow that's manageable to where people aren't waiting 3-4 months for back orders. So it's, as far as business goes, it's nice to see, but it's also, it makes me worried that maybe you all of a sudden start seeing more inventory start showing up, and you start questioning whether or not there are people out there that are going to continue to enjoy the product. So
what's your gut feeling?
Business-wise, you always get scared. My gut feeling is I think the community's strong. And I think the worldwide community that was used to smoking Cuban cigars and still smokes Cuban cigars, but just pays, a much higher price point, they might be looking for alternatives. And I believe there's places like, Dominican Republic, Honduras, and Nicaragua, and other places that are giving them great alternatives. So I think the community got so strong during the pandemic that it created not trend smokers. It became a thing. Like, people became kind of like lifetime smokers. They decided, okay, this is what I want to do. I enjoy this community. I enjoy sitting down and disappearing for an hour and a half, 2 hours while I enjoy this cigar. I don't think those people are going anywhere. I think what's going away is the hobbyists that just jumped in there for a quick split and said, I'm just going to try this because it's cool. I think that the people that are smoking are more involved and more passionate. They appreciate the information of what goes into the product that they're enjoying. I see it continuing to grow, but I always worry. That's me by nature.
I completely agree with you on the consumer side of things. Now, obviously, you've experienced firsthand the challenges and the positives of the boom. Are you worried when it comes to the manufacturing side and people probably starting to take a shortcut here and there, trying to fill that demand, but ultimately, letting go of some of the strict quality control?
I think where you probably saw people letting go of quality control was really maybe when they didn't have the workforce. Maybe they were, behind in production, so they were trying to get product out a little too soon. That's probably one of the worst things for the industry, because during the boom, when it became like pirates down in different countries where people were stealing rollers from people, and then they were utilizing, again, banana leaves to roll cigars. The first cigar that someone would light up was a piece of garbage, and they were like new to the culture. So they smoked their first cigar that was a piece of trash, and they realized, well, that's not for me. And they said, obviously, I don't understand what people enjoy about this, so I'm just going to pass on it altogether, and I'm going to go back to my other hobbies. I don't see that now, because I think there's so many great manufacturers and great brands out there that immediately you can light up and go, wow, this is why people are in love with this.
Thank God. I like the analogy that you brought, or the aspect rather, the idea of the consumer being more educated and wanting to get more information. People are open. They like transparency in the cigars. They want to know where the tobaccos come from. Thankfully, there's people who watch shows like ours, right? And all our fellows joining us here. Yet, comparatively, the industry is still a few steps behind. When you look into the wine industry, for example, knowledge is much more readily available. You have more transparency when it comes to the production side, probably. I mean, I think you mentioned in our first chat a couple of years ago, you have a collection of old tobacco and cigar books, right? And
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's a small number of tobacco or cigar related books that will give you that deep dive into the growing, the pre-industry, the rolling, aging. So why do you think that is, and why are we still lacking some of that knowledge being more readily available to the public?
Well, I don't know. I think nowadays you have YouTube for a lot of those reasons. And I don't think as many people are looking to buy books like they used to. That's just the sign of the times. But I think you're talking about a lot of times farmers that have a family-owned brand, and they're not always great with the aspects of knowing how to promote their products. You've seen an evolution of that over the years, for sure. Social media came in, and then a lot of these companies started understanding, like, oh, there's a different way for us to promote and tell people about our story. But before the internet, it was hard to get to some of these places to go talk to a tobacco grower and find out, what goes into the process of what they do. That's why you see, old videos out there of very raw footage of people on farms asking people in Spanish questions about what they're doing in the farm and how they're rolling the cigars. But I mean, there's a lot out there, but it's usually on video. Occasionally nowadays, you'll see more and more of these companies doing short, 10, 15, 20-minute documentary pieces about their brand and their process, which helps, educate the consumer about where they're getting the product from. Again, I think it's because naturally it's not something that this industry did, because we didn't know how to do it. And again, I go back to the whole case of a lot of these tobacco, brand owners, they're farmers that they know one specific way. We grow tobacco, we roll it up for you, and we make what we think is a good cigar. It wasn't really more than that. I think they always struggled on how to get their brand out there. And that happens with a lot of wine brands also in remote areas that you never heard of.
I was just about to say, I believe the same is probably true for, a farmer somewhere in Sicily, who's doing an excellent wine and
amazing wines, and no one knows about them.
Bottles in the cellar and nobody knows about it. Exactly. Do you think it's just a matter of time before the industry, the cigar industry, catches on to that and probably follows in the footsteps of? And we've seen it in other industries as well, wine, craft beer, the spirits industry kind of followed suit. Chefs became popular, bartenders became popular.
Yeah. I think with things like with the guys that produced and directed the hand roll movie, I think with them doing storytelling, more of those things needs to be out. They need to be involved with more of them. I know that they have a new episode coming at the trade show this year with another family, which is a great family, one of the oldest families in the industry, and it'll be good to see what they did telling their story. But I know they want to do more. The biggest problem is that, to produce these episodes, it takes money, and we don't have backing from things like Netflix. I mean, if Netflix decided to get involved and say, hey, yeah, we want to do a whole series of episodes about tobacco growers, I think every cigar company would get in line and say, please pick me, because we all want to tell our story. We just don't have either the means to do it, or we just don't know how to do it. And we need talented people like Steve and Jesse from Handrolled to be able to do things like that.
Very true. It my question might sound a bit controversial, but do you also feel that sometimes it's a problem of the inner circle of the industry, people who watch programs like Light 'em Up, or people who would read long format posts and who read Cigar Journal, Half Wheel, that it's too small of an inner circle, whereas the majority of the people who enjoy premium cigars are less in tune with the intricacies of the industry, less interested in what's actually happening behind the scenes. Because I always question, why don't we see more long format content, for example?
Yeah, like we're the people in this room, myself included, we're an anomaly. Like it's not the whole industry. A lot of people, let's be honest, a lot of people don't care. A lot of people just want to go buy a cigar and keep on smoking the same cigar over and over again. Just like they want to go into a store and buy the same 6-pack of beer that they've always bought and not pay it. They just want to buy a good product. There are a small core of people that really want to know more. And I'm hoping that core starts to expand. I believe it has, because of what we went through the last several years. I think that small circle has expanded to a bigger circle, but it could easily get bigger. And I don't think it's from the lack of some of the cigar companies trying. I think it's just people don't take the time like we do. And, I'm the ultimate cigar geek. Like, I want to know every piece of information out there, and I'll be in every room watching these things because I want to see this world expand, but that's not for everybody.
Yeah, great point. Ian, you had a question. Please chime in.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi. See you. And had a couple of questions.
You're cutting out a little bit.
Is that okay? Can you hear me?
Yeah, but you keep on cutting out. So.
Okay, I'll try it on this speaker.
That's better.
You work a lot with Don Pepin.
Yes.
And I'm sure you've learned a lot from him. Perhaps you can give us sort of 3 or 4 things you have learned from working with Don Pepin. And second question is, I know you love fine wines. Yeah. I'm having some cigar friends over in a couple of weeks' time, and we're going to be having wines and whiskey and so on. Tell us a bit about some good pairings of really fine wine with cigars.
Well, let me tell you about the Pepin side first, because the wine thing is very subjective. I would say it's the little things that I've learned from Pepin and Jaime over the years. Little things that we don't pay attention to. Like, ultimately, I want to go in, I want to see good materials chosen and rolled up into a cigar, and I want the cigar to perform well. But there's like little things, like the way the roller turns his hand when he moves the bunch before he puts the wrapper on the cigar. Little things that if they do it just a hair wrong, it will affect the way the cigar smokes. The way he does double binders on every cigar, the particular way he lays out the pattern of those double binders to put on underneath that wrapper. I could tell you, I've watched him roll cigars thousands of times, and every time I watch him roll, I think I can sit down and do it, and I know I can't. So he hasn't taught me how to roll, because I just realized that I would butcher it, so I just refuse to do it. Looking at leaves in the farm and being able to tell what seed varietal they are. These are things that I didn't know before I met him, because I didn't have those teachers that would actually take the time to explain those little things. And even with the language barrier, I speak great tobacco Spanish. I don't speak good Spanish, but for tobacco Spanish, I'm pretty good. So he also understands that he can speak to me slowly and I'll understand. And when it comes to tobacco, it's a lot easier. So little things, driving to the farm now, I can say, "Oh, you're planting Habano." And he'll be like, "Yeah," because I know the shape of the leaf, that type of thing. There's so much I'll be honest. I was a cigar smoker and a consumer, and I believed I had a good palate. I didn't know really the inner workings of really how a cigar was made from start to finish since day one. And I've just watched the family grow and watched every piece of that growth and just paid attention more. So I've learned hundreds of things that I never knew before. As far as the wine pairing goes, that's tough because I like certain wines with certain cigars. And I'll tell you a bunch of wines I love that hold up to cigars. I prefer right bank wines over left bank. I prefer, if you want to go Italian, I love Sangrantino, one of my favorite varietals. I think it's one of the healthiest varietals you could ever actually drink also. I love a good Vinsanto after a good meal and to have with a cigar. I think it's a beautiful dessert style wine, obviously, to enjoy. So, I mean, I do more reds. I know there's a lot of people that like to drink champagne with cigars. I have to find the right cigar to do that with. I know there's a lot of people that drink white wine with cigars. I prefer red most of the time. So, and to me, I just like the taste of red wine with a cigar. So it's really, I haven't run into many pairing issues because I love the mix. And it really has nothing to do with the seed varietals of each. I just like the pairing.
Pete,
it's a very untraditional pairing.
Pete, if I may ask just a follow-up question on that, how do you feel about tannins in red wine? Because like high percentages of alcohol, I feel that tannins can pose quite a bit of challenge to the palate. When they're green and unripe, of course, more so. But do you rather choose a red with less tannins or more elegance, like a Burgundy rather than a Bordeaux? Or
I actually do more Bordeaux's than I do because I think they have the body and the structure. Sometimes Burgundies can have amazing flavors, but maybe a little thin on the palate, depending on what you're buying for Burgundy, though. I mean, there are some Burgundies that are outrageously expensive that will fill your palate up perfectly fine. I'm a big Cabernet Franc fan, like huge Cabernet Franc, and Cabernet Franc has a lot of grip to it. Will lock you up real quick, dry you up. But I find that the cigar, if it's well balanced, it will have like this saliva creating process to what you're enjoying, that it will actually spark your taste buds up and you'll start, having a lot of saliva in your mouth. So it's actually good to dry it up with a thing like Cabernet Franc. But I will say I've had a cigar with pretty much not every seed varietal, but most of every country's. I love Riojas with a cigar, and Riojas traditionally have a broken down tannin because it's aged a little longer. It's a little softer on the palate, but big ripe flavors. So yeah, I don't know. A lot of times I don't care either, Reinhardt. I'll open up a bottle, and if it's too tannic, I'll let them fight each other because I'm going to enjoy both no matter what.
Ian,
I hope that answers your question.
Though.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to try some with De Croo and some Riosec, so I hope that'll go well.
Wow, beautiful. Yeah, funny story is my wife can't drink De Croo. She says it gets her a little loopy every time she has it. It's a big wine, actually. A very big one.
Luciano was joining us in the comments over on Facebook. He's watching. He said Priorat for him. It's the best. So.
Oh yeah, another big tannic, heavy tannic. Yeah, that's a different animal altogether. That's why I think I probably like Sagrantinos, because it's very similar styling.
Brian, over to you.
Wait, isn't getting a little loopy kind of part of the whole idea, right? Isn't that the point?
Yeah, I mean, the first time she ever had Ducro, we were actually in Bordeaux, and she's like, "What's in that wine?" She goes, "I don't know if I can drink much more than a glass." I go, "No, it's just good wine. It just happens to be big." So every time I pull a bottle out of the cellar, she's like, "Are you sure?" I go, "Well, this one's got a little age on it, so I think you'll be good."
Okay, so I have an easy question. I was listening earlier about the Trocadero, and it's one that I haven't had, and I could have Googled it, but I wanted to ask you. So I used to live in West Hollywood, right down from the Chateau Mama.
Yeah.
And you were talking about the band, possibly playing at the Roxy and such. So is the cigar named after the bar? The Trocadero? No.
Okay. Because across the street from the Chateau Marmont is a place called the Trocadero also.
Right, I used to go there all the time.
The Trocadero is obviously based off of the place in Paris, but Trocadero was an old Cuban brand. So when I was searching through books to register brand names, I found Trocadero, and I also found old artwork. Eventually, I ended up making my own artwork for the band, because I do all that myself 99% of the time. But yeah, the name came from an old Cuban brand.
Fascinating. All right.
Which is based off the area in Paris.
Okay, gotcha. I just thought it would be amazing, because that was like our hangout. That was like our cheers. We were there all the time. That was crazy.
It's a cool little bar.
Yeah, we like it. It's still there. Yeah. We used to like it because I think the owner was the same person that owned all the Cabo cantinas, and I think that was like their big money makers and where the attention was. So like I think they never really paid attention to what was going on over at the Sunset Trocadero. So it was the situation where it was like, we're gonna tip you a lot and you're just gonna keep giving us free stuff, and it was like just a really fun hangout. Here's maybe an interesting question. This more fascinating than that little guy. I thought of this last week actually, in terms of cigar media. We haven't touched on it yet today. I was noticing that I'm getting a lot of brand new releases because I'm in these like Cigar of the Month clubs, and then I'll go to look to see if I can find a review about it online. And a lot of times I've noticed a bit of a delay. So like if this cigar is brand new, I'm not going to necessarily see it on Coop right away or Half Wheel until maybe quite a lot of time is going to pass. So from like a brand owner point of view, can that be stressful at all? Like how much stock do you put into the ratings? And is there a moment where you release a cigar and you're kind of like waiting around like, will someone review this thing, please?
Yeah. We really like ratings when they're good. But when we put out the cigar, we can't rely on someone like immediately reviewing it before it even comes out. So we have to wait. And we hope that it performs well. But again, ratings are subjective also, because it's only, one or two people that are doing the review. But we always definitely promote the ones that are really good.
Cool. Thanks. Cheers.
Ryan, many thanks for your question. The Professor, Jose, it's good to have you with us as always.
Well, if Pete Johnson's on a show and I can get on it, to me, it's a friend. Just going to say I've known Pete for around 20 years. And I think.
Longer.
Might be, but let's not I don't want people really to know my age. And I have to say this about Pepin and Pete. I think that when they came out, they brought, in my opinion, and that's, if you remember the quote I gave at Cigar Aficionado in the magazine, I think they brought out a different style of cigars that we hadn't seen. And I've been smoking for 57 years. So previous those 30-something years, I had not smoked cigars that had that spice, that earthiness, that balance, that aroma, and different notes that you wouldn't pick. And you had great cigars from Huida Nicaragua, you had great cigars from Padron. But what Pepin came out with, in my humble opinion, was something totally different. What Pete wanted Pepin to achieve he gave him the guidelines. I want this from Cuba, I want this from Dominican, I want this from Nicaragua. This is what I want to create. And I've always admires Pete's work and Pepin. Pete knows that when I used to live in Nicaragua, I spent a lot of time at that factory with Pepin and in the farm. So that's what I think. Also, in those days, I think that 80% of the people could not say tatuaje. People, I would be in the shop, I want the cigar from the guy with tattoos. What's the name of it? And then the store is up in the air and he has the cigars there. It said, tatuaje. Yeah, that one, tatuaje. So that was a little bit of it. But then after time, we got to go and look at it. Was it the damn tatuaje name or was it really the cigar? In my humble opinion, I think it was all about the cigar.
Yeah, I agree. It was it was always about the cigar.
Exactly. And I got to tell you something for those people out there, Pete could agree or not agree with me. To me, one of the most underrated cigars that the industry has made, and in this case, Pepin and my good friend Pete Johnson, is La Riqueza. That cigar has everything you want in the cigar and more. And thank God a couple of years ago, Pete gave me from the original ones 10, and I had about 5 or 6 still left. So if you can find, if you're out there and you go to a store and you can find some of those old Riquezas, buy them all, because that is an amazing cigar. And Pete did not give me anything to say that. It's because I love that cigar. Pete, always great to see you, brother.
Good seeing you too, Jose. Lawrence, Reinhardt, the Lawrence doesn't know how to put his hand up.
I was just about to call Lawrence in, and I would love to hear your questions. Chime in, my friend.
What I wanted to say, can you hear me?
Yes,
very well.
Very good.
Yeah, what I wanted to say is that if you look at the RC collection, which has been a phenomenal success in my store, we're already out of the Toro. Toro's outsold everything. We're coming to a very crucial point in the cigar world where, due to stupidity of Habanos at the moment, not only just for the price rises, but the unavailability of certain lines, that the world has had an opportunity to try other things. And the RC range is unique because it's very Cuban-esque, but at the same time, they're not plugged, they're not smashed. Everyone comes out that, you know, look, I've never had a tatuaje that has ever been wrong. Never had one that's been plugged, never had one that doesn't draw beautifully, doesn't burn beautifully, doesn't have the right. And I'm getting stuff out of Cuba. Not so long ago, in the last 6 months, I received a box of cigars that had bands on that had nothing to do with the cigar that was in it. And I've got customers who would never smoke anything other than Cuban. Never. And they're picking up the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, which I've done with you, Pete. But they're now picking up the RC1 and the RC2. And they're saying, hey, this is unbelievable. It's incredible value for money. And in England, they're expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, the RC2 in England, all right, is £30. Right? But it's, you know, it's the same size in Cuban as a £50 cigar. So I think that your time is coming in terms of the acknowledgement in the non-American market. And all I think that needs to take place really is we need more information.
Yeah.
All right. And it's not just more information about Tatuaje. All right. It's more information about the whole of this huge host of great cigar makers in the New World. I know you don't like the expression "the New World," but it's what us idiots in Europe have become accustomed to. And I think that if we could get that information, if we could get more about my father, more about Tatuaje, more about, you know, Perdomo, more about these brands that are out there that are producing very fine cigars. Right? I mean, there are some rubbish out there as well. And you know, I'm not going to mention any of the makers, but there are some stuff that just isn't my palate. It must be somebody's palate because they're buying them. All right. And I just wonder what we could do to try and perpetuate that information out there.
Yeah, I think we're still struggling with marketing in general because we don't have a team of people for a marketing department. Neither do the Garcia family. Everything we do is very, you know, mom and pop in mentality. I think we're starting to get better at some of these things, but it's a slow process for us for sure.
Pete, what I would love to add to that as a follow-up question is, how do you look at it in terms of strategy as well? Because the international markets are a whole clusterfuck of so many different regulatory issues. You have all the importation taxation. For a brand, the US also being the number one market for cigars is so much easier to serve. And most of the brands to this day probably have challenges filling and supplying to the demand in the US already, let alone going to the international markets. Yet, if you're truly trying to establish and build a global brand, you have to find the balance between the two as well. How do you think about that?
I think for us, it's just going to take time. I mean, when we were hit with this new wave of the, you know, since the pandemic, this new mini boom, whatever you want to call it, we got backed up just here in the United States. And then you had a thing that Habanos did with the pricing and the quality, and that opened up this whole nother door for people wanting our products also. So we're slowly building that up, but it was a quick amount of time that this happened. You're talking within a year. Within the last 6 months, I think I get requests almost every other day from different distributors in different countries. And it's hard to navigate because, again, we don't know who these people are. We don't know if they have references from any other company. Luckily, we've had distributors that we've been working with for the last 12, 13 years that have stuck with us, and they're starting to grow the portfolios for us in those countries. But I think it all just took time. When we first went to Dortmund for the first time, what was it? In 2009, when we went, no one really knew who we were outside the United States. And we were a pretty popular brand in the United States by that time. But it's slow. And this is like the newest window of opportunity for us to kind of get into those markets. But it's going to take a little time just to build that inventory, because we don't want to just slap a ban on something and call it quits. We want to make sure it's right. Excuse me 1 second. I'm going to put myself on mute so I can ask my wife a question.
Of course, please do. And in the meantime, I would love to invite Ryan on and hear from you, buddy. I believe the last question is right down your alley with the Leaf Masters in Dubai. Ryan, I'm sure you can perfectly speak or add to that question and the aspect we just discussed.
My apologies.
Not
I just
at all.
wanted to get another cigar and I didn't want to get up.
For some reason, I always get the last question, but that's great. Reinhardt, I hope you're doing well. It's great to hear you saying that the clusterfuck term. That adds an interesting edge to the session today. Pete, always a pleasure. We're very excited about having your cigars. They should be in Dubai on the shelves, I would say, within the next week to 10 days. The shipment is on its way. We're launching with the RC series, a great selections of the RCs. So we're very excited about that. And Lawrence has been very kind in making me taste some of the good stuff that's coming up, and that has been mind-blowing, really. Which reminds me with the story I wanted to share with you. Obviously, as we decided to get into the Tatuaje cigars, and these are cigars I've been smoking for a while now. Believe it or not, you have a great following in this part of the world. A lot of people love the cigars, love the brand. And every time I get a new brand, I just make it a point for me to choose 4 or 5 of my close, well-informed, well-smoked, if you may, clients that basically test the cigars and give me feedback about the cigars. And obviously this is done in a blind tasting kind of an approach. And I've been doing this every time somebody's traveling to the US or Europe. I make sure that they get me a new box of something that I have not tried from Tatuaje. And we're 5 people, and every time I remove the band and we sit and we smoke the cigars, and it's been blowing their mind. And I'm not saying this to all you up. I'm saying this truthfully. It's been blowing their mind. They've been loving those cigars. And after 5 cigars, they were saying, enough with this teasing. It's about time. There's been too much foreplay. Tell us what the hell are we smoking? And I'm like, you're smoking Tatuaje. And 3 out of the 4 surprisingly said, Tat what? They did not know the brand. They did not know the cigars. But it just blew their mind. Which brings me to a point that obviously complements everything that's been said, but especially what's been said by Lawrence and what's been said by many others on Jose. Definitely what Jose said about the brand and how certain cigars are underrated or what have you. But I really believe, from judging by my humble evaluation of what's happening to some cigars in my shop, at least, there are certain brands that I can see the clients just picking up any cigar and enjoying that cigar. For them, any cigar from that specific brand is a smokable, enjoyable, phenomenal, flawless cigars. And I really see Tatuaje being one of those in my shop, based on my personal experience and based on the experience I've done with my sample group, if you may. And this, in my humble opinion, is creating Lawrence was saying people hate the new world kind of reference, but these brands are creating what I believe to be a parallel world in terms of the cigar, and a different world as far as what they're creating, as far as what they're doing, as far as the flavor profile, as far as the quality. And you don't know whether you want to place this in between the big brands, if you would say, or the boutique, or something in parallel that is of their own, I guess. And this is what I wanted to say, really. I don't know if any of this makes sense to you, Pete.
No, yeah, I get it.
Honestly, congratulations, honestly. And I mean that truthfully.
Thank you. I will say something about the RC series, is that that brand, that line of cigars has been out for about 5 years now. And it took a long time for people to recognize it. First off, it was made for international territories only. It was not made for the United States. So when we were making them for international clients, it was, and always in small batches. And we'd always have to segregate the tobacco out for, let's say, 5,000 cigars. Sometimes you're actually hurting yourself when you're only making 5,000 cigars at a time, because you have to go back to that recipe book and find that same batch of tobacco to make the cigars again. I think it's right now, it's going to start hitting its stride even better, because we're now making them in larger quantities. We're making sure that the product's readily available for the international markets, and we're not having to do batch by batch by batch by batch. It's part of regular production. And that's going to help us in the long run, because now we can make sure those tobaccos are always set aside for these particular products. You know, I always say that when you start a new line and you do a small batch, you might get a great first batch, and then the second batch, there might have been something missed in translation and it doesn't quite taste as good as the first batch. But when you start making things in large quantities, it's on that rolling floor and the tobaccos are being moved through production. Always the same tobaccos are moving through that production. You're going to end up finding more consistency. So I think right now is actually the best time to get that brand, because we are making them in larger quantities and having those tobaccos to make those cigars with. So I think it's a brand that will do really well, but it took a long time to get there. It kind of dates back to the original of where Tatuaje came from 20 years ago. When we're making Tatuajes in Little Havana, Miami, in the old days, we had to rely on getting, you know, boxes of tobacco from different vendors to make the particular blend. But as soon as the Garcias started growing all this tobacco for us to utilize, it made the cigars more consistent over and over and over again. The only thing we have to worry about is whether the rollers are having a good day or a bad day. That's ultimately, you know, the joke is always, you never want to have a cigar that came from a roller on Monday morning or Friday afternoon, because he's probably hungover from the weekend, or he wants to leave the factory on Friday to go party. Not everybody, but you know, that's the joke. And it's just better to have these cigars produced over and over again. And that's where, you know, throwing in these wrenches into the machine sometimes cause an issue, because you end up stopping production to fill, you know, a 5,000 cigar run. We just released a brand in the United States 2 weeks ago, and it was 206,000 cigars, and it was a limited edition. And we sold them in 1 week. And that was a limited edition. But the consistency is shining through that line, because every cigar that you pick up tastes identical, because the tobaccos were separated and ready to go for production, and they made sure they had enough of it ready to go. Actually, my nephew, Jaime's son, Pepin's grandson, obviously, Handi, is in the factory every day of the week now in Nicaragua. And when he was sorting through the San Andreas wrapper for the Tuxtla series, he actually sorted out a certain grade of that San Andreas, and he actually nicknamed it Tuxtla, because it had that toothiness, it had that color grade, it had everything he wanted to make sure that those cigars were beautiful on the outside. So we're lucky when we actually can make more, because it gives us the ability to be more consistent over time, and the rollers get used to the muscle memory in their hands, and they're able to produce things over and over again without an issue. We don't use one draw testing machine in the factory. It's really about Pepin teaching his rollers exactly how he wants them to roll and how he wants them to bunch, and having that muscle memory in their hands so they know exactly how much tobacco to grab when they're filling a bunch. If that's done right, you shouldn't have to use a draw tester. It's about experience.
Of course. You know, and that's, I guess, the graduation component that I'm talking about as far as the overall brand. I mean, I'm sure you can see it yourself. My other question is, and this is where my question kicks in, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, on the contrary, I mean it in a challenging manner. Mm-hmm. Do you find yourself in your comfort zone as far as your access to tobacco? Do you find yourself at some point saying, it is time that Pete gets out of
Nicaragua,
my father's no, no, God forbid, gets out of my father's cigar supply of phenomenal tobacco and tries to do something else with tobaccos of other growers or other brands?
Well, we already do it, because if you look at what we do with Connecticut broadleaf, that comes from a particular grower we have a good partnership with in the United States. If you look at the Habano Ecuador that we use, that comes from Oliva tobacco. If you look at the Sumatra, which, by the way, this is a Sumatra wrap cigar. The Sumatra that Oliva has been supplying us over the last few years has been absolutely gorgeous and phenomenal flavor. The San Andreas obviously comes from the Turan family, which to me is the best grower of San Andreas out there. ASP, which is the Perez family, that's where we get our Connecticut Ecuador from. So we have good partnerships. And because of those good partnerships, it gives us a great comfort knowing that we're getting good quality tobacco to work with. But when it comes to fillers and binders, the family has such a vast array of regions that they grow in, and farms and plots within those regions, that we're able to really jump through a big, vast world of choices to make products, to make different cigars. I think the biggest challenge that we're going to have is that, Jaime and Pepin have already told me, you better start getting ready for some, putting together a blend with Honduran tobacco, which I'm very welcoming to it. But, with their gigantic farm in Honduras that they put together, and it's growing tobacco right now, that gives us an opportunity to branch outside our normal comfort zone, but still gives us a nice comfort that it's being grown by the people that we know. So it takes us out of like, okay, we have this challenge to mix in Honduran tobacco, but at least we know the growers have a consistency that we like. It's very rare that when it comes to fillers and binders that Pepin will actually, it's just non-existent anymore. Back in the old days, we had to source tobacco from other people. We had no choice. But now we're able to source within a big portfolio of choices. So it's challenging every day putting a new cigar together, but sometimes you just know what's right and what's for us ultimately.
Thank you.
Yeah, Honduran coming into the Honduran tobacco coming into play will be a new sit down period of me analyzing how I want to utilize the Honduran tobacco.
I can't wait for that. That's going to be very interesting. Well, I know you love your wine. I know you love your good food, and we have a lot of that here in Dubai. So we look forward to hosting you here whenever you are somewhere close. And I know a lot of people would love to sit there and listen to you and talk to you and get to know you better and get to know the cigars better. So
hopefully one day soon.
Consider this an open invitation.
Thank you. I definitely want to get over there. I just hope it's sooner than later.
Excellent.
I have some regrets in life. I wanted to, for many years, I wanted to visit Israel because our distributor there who's been with us for a long time, his father thought that I was this exotic creature, and he had to have me in Israel and in Tel Aviv at night. And I promised him every year I saw him at the trade show, and unfortunately he passed away. So I regret not going beforehand.
I know him very well. He's a great man. Bless his soul.
Yeah.
Right. Many thanks for your question. Many thanks for chiming in and being.
You have a lot of hands up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Tough to go through. I believe Andy
Thank you.
had his hand up for quite a while, and the question in the chat box as well. Andy, good to see you, my man. It's been a while.
It has been a while, Reinhardt. It's good to see you, my friend. And if there's any man that's going to drag me back in the cold evenings in the UK, it's certainly going to be Mr. Pete Johnson. I'll tell you that for free.
Very cool.
A couple of questions, Pete. Huge fan, by the way. I've been an SNS member for 2 or 3 years now. So yeah, I think we're one of the few international SNS members. But a couple of questions. I know things have been quite serious, and I know you like to have a little bit of fun around cigars. So my first question was: we all, or many people, know that you have an Opus X tattoo. So you have to get one of your brands tattooed. Which one are you getting, and why?
Well, I already have my brand on my arm here, the original. It's right there. I mean, obviously that was for a reason. It was when I started the line, I had to put it on my body because it meant a lot to me. But if I had to get a new tattoo of another brand that I've done, I'll be honest, I'd probably get the La Dueña logo, because not only did I do the artwork, but you know, she already took my heart. She might as well take my skin too.
Of course. And then the second question. When are we getting another La Verite? Come on.
Oh,
come on.
That's a tough one.
We need one, Pete. We need one.
Well, I mean, luckily for everybody, I have a pretty decent library of original La Verite. I kind of, that project was one of those things where I kind of followed the wine world a lot. When I walked into Chateau Lafite for the first time many years ago, I noticed they had a library of old vintages. So, and that obviously went through every chateau in Bordeaux, and I saw the same thing. So I was like, okay, I'm going to make sure with this project that I hold back a good library for personal consumption, but it's probably more than I can actually smoke. So maybe some of those products will get out there. I was talking about doing La Verite 2018 when the 2018 crops were ready to be used. And the first couple samples I did, I wasn't thrilled with. So I decided to do a La Verite off of a different farm from a different region than the original farm. And I remember revisiting the cigar that I put together, because we made enough prototypes for me to smoke over a period of time. And it ended up being probably one of the mildest cigars I've ever put together. You don't realize it until it sits in the cigar for a little while, but it's a tough project. It's really about being down in Nicaragua. And at the time that I was really heavy in rotation with La Verite projects, I was down in Nicaragua 14 times a year, looking at those tobaccos and constantly checking, like, okay, what's the most current usable tobacco vintage that I can use, and do we have enough of the different varietals from their particular farm? The reason why I changed the farm on the last prototype was because the Estrella farm, which was where La Verite was started, they only did one seed varietal, and I did that the first year, but I really wanted to be more expressive and have more expression, obviously. And that's where, if you look at 2008 compared to 2009 just had way more going on, because the Garcias had very few farms back then, but they had enough farms to where they started growing different seed varietals on Estrella. So I had a little bit more to choose from, but over the years, now Estrella kind of houses one, maybe two seed varietals. But for the last several years, it's always been one particular seed varietal, and we utilize those tobaccos based on plot. So it's really about being down in Nicaragua and deep diving into the whole project again. Hopefully one day soon I can get back into it, but it has to be perfect. I'll tell you, in the 2010 vintage, no one ever saw it because I wasn't happy with the product. So we ultimately never made it.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pete. I think just final thoughts on that. I think Larraqueza was mentioned, and buy them all up. I'll throw the same thought out on La Verite 2009. If you can still find boxes of that bad boy in either of the sizes, buy the whole lot. Buy the whole lot. They were incredible. I
have about, between the two sizes, I have about 1,200 cigars of 09. So
I'll send you my address.
Not a lot, but not a little.
Thank you.
You get some wine in exchange?
I was going to say,
What are you drinking?
Bordeaux, bottle of Bordeaux too. It's from Medoc, so it's 2000 and 2000. I think it's 18. It's quite young, to be fair, but it's nice.
Yeah.
I'm the guy on Instagram that occasionally tags you in a bottle of wine and a Tatuaje cigar.
Can I ask what chateau?
Saint the bottle's inside, to be honest with you. It might be Saint Germain, maybe.
Okay. I like driving around both the left and the right bank and getting lost. So yeah, I love that region.
It was good with I smoked a Noea broadleaf, so it was really good, to be fair. I love the Noea size.
Fun. Yeah, me too. There's actually a cigar that we made in Miami in 2021. I boxed them in 2022. Next month they will be a year in the box, and it's like a long Noea but with the Kohonu wrapper, and kind of sandwiched in a foil bundle inside the box. It's I would say it's kind of like my homage to what old Cazadores were like. That's why I still make the Havana Cazadore in Miami, because I love that style where when it gets put in that foil bundle, they kind of mess around with each other until you let them escape. I gave a great analogy to a friend of mine the other day, because he was smoking a cigar that came out of Miami that had no cellophane on it. And then he was smoking another cigar that was made in Miami that I had put cellophane on it. And he goes, that seems like a little stronger. And it's a bad analogy, but just bear with me. It was like having yourself in a robe with nothing on underneath it, or putting yourself in a latex bodysuit. I would probably think that most people are going to appreciate the robe over the latex bodysuit. So I love cigars that have no cello. That's just me. And I think, it lets them breathe. But I also believe that cigars are sponges. So I treat them like babies, and I don't want them to be exposed to outside elements. So I'm very protective of where the cigars sit in the humidor to make sure that there's no outside influences to how they're breathing and aging.
It's probably a difficult question to answer, Pete, in that regards. When it comes to the cellophane, would you rather prefer what it actually does to the cigar, or if it's more convenient for the retailer and you have less issues with rejects, damages on the cigars?
Well, every retailer that I know will tell you they prefer uncellowed cigars, but for business, they prefer cigars in cello. Only because of the breakage and the travel and the damage that could go through during travel. And now that we're shipping cigars clear across the world, you want to get them there safely.
Could you please, just for another second, hold the cigar into the camera? We had a couple of comments on Facebook that people were curious about the ring and the cigar you're smoking.
It's called Ambos Mundos. Ambos Mundos is another old Cuban cigar brand that I own the trademark of. And there you go. And he's smoking the same one. This was actually a cigar that I made for the club. It's not traditionally the Ambos Mundos blend, but I had the bands that said Sumatra, Semilla Sumatra on it. So I see now 3 people, myself and two other people, that have the same cigar in their hands. This was a fabulous cigar. Absolutely a great smoke that everybody thought they were getting the original Ambos Mundos, but I had to explain to them we had to call it the not Ambos Mundos, because it was a different blend that we made exclusively for the club.
Brilliant, thank
you. And you can tell by the wrapper color. The wrapper is just absolutely beautiful. And every time I mentioned the Sumatra wrapper when I was in the factory in Nicaragua recently, I would say that everybody that's close to it, their eyes, woke up and they kind of said, yeah, Like the Sumatra is really good right now. So we have a great batch of Sumatra that, when I say batch, it's a lot of Sumatra. But, you know, tobacco goes through waves. I remember there was a brief time in the like 2009, 2010 time period where Sumatra went through the Sumatra Ecuador that we were getting went through this morph. The seeds started growing differently, and the tobacco just wasn't looking and feeling and tasting like the Sumatra Ecuador that we had gotten before. Eventually, the seed corrected itself, and since then we haven't had any issues. But I just during that time I avoided working with Sumatra because it tasted too much like Habano. There was not much of a difference to it, but now it's got its own character.
And you said this was something that happened on the seed per se, or how the plants developed. It was nothing to do with the pre-industry or how it was treated.
It was an odd time because again, we don't grow the Sumatra. It was Oliva tobacco, and I remember talking with Gustavo Cura that manages Oliva tobacco, and we happened to have like a lot of people in the factory that day, and I'll name drop a little bit, but Ernesto Carrillo happened to be there. Gustavo was there, Pepina Jaime, obviously. And I told Gustavo that I was thinking about coming out with a few of my sizes that I already do with Habano and broadleaf. I was going to do them also with Sumatra. And he looked at me and goes, I wouldn't right now. The seed didn't perform well, and the Sumatra we got just doesn't feel or taste or anything like Sumatra. So I had a sample of the Sumatra, and I realized that it was completely just not what I remember of Sumatra. Of course, Sumatra, Ecuador. And I remember asking Ernie, I go, have you tried the Sumatra? And he goes, yeah, it's just weird. Like, so it was obvious that there was a problem somewhere, probably in the growing. Eventually it corrected itself. Maybe the seed corrected itself, or the farming got better. And I haven't seen an issue with Sumatra in years. In the last several years, the Sumatra's just been gorgeous.
Interesting. And
well, that's a whole nother world that I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Like the farming aspect, I just don't know. That's something that Pepin has, Pepin's the true Guajiro guy that can walk on the farm and look at the dirt and tell you we need to do something. Jaime is the technical guy that is an agronomist, trained and studied this in Cuba, and knows that, okay, we need to test the soils and we need to do this and check these things before we grow this tobacco. But it's two different worlds. And then to me, it's all French. I don't understand it. Because it is an art for sure.
And when you see those two worlds coming together, it's perfect if you have both, right? The one more experience based, where you have kind of a natural connection with what's happening in the soil, in the plant, and the other one being more technical, but bringing them together is a wonderful symbiosis there.
You still have a few people out their hands up.
Absolutely.
Rusty and Dijon.
Rusty,
actually,
you're up next.
How we doing, Pete? It's good to see you again.
Man. How are you?
Still waiting on that Baroque Cazadori, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
one day.
But my question is about NFTs. Now you've done both sides of the business, retail and manufacturing. And I understand the manufacturing aspect of it and the benefits. What I don't understand is retailers' benefits. And in a time where, recognition is a social media post away. Mm-hmm. Like, for instance, what happened with the LFD one this last time. From my best guesstimation, they're going to have to sell, on average, $150,000 worth of that one cigar to make up, to make initial cost.
Yeah, I don't really understand the NFT thing. I'm doing one with Abe from Smoke In.
Right.
I'll be perfectly honest that I don't know enough about the process to really grasp onto it. The one thing that I do know how to do is to come up with a good cigar, and Abe's really the mastermind behind this whole process. I don't know how people are going to react to it. I don't think it will go as crazy as the bowl did. I think that was just absolutely nuts, because I watched it. I watched it in awe, going, I can't even understand this. Again, I still can't get it, but I like making cigars, so that's the one thing I'll concentrate on.
I mean, you've done your share of them too. You know, everybody has done a store exclusive.
Yeah.
So I don't understand the retailer's aspect of the NFT at all. Investing that much money into one cigar when, like I said, there's, you know, recognition's a social media post away. So what other reason is there?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe of having something that's only available to a select amount of people. On the purchaser side, the same thing goes with what Abe is doing with this. Is that there's actually only 6 going up on auction. There's actually 7 being made, but Abe is possessing the 7th one. Yeah, I think it's all about exclusivity. But yeah, well, I've done multiple, you know, single store releases. I stopped doing single store releases years ago, but on the occasion you see 1 or 2 swim out there every once in a while. And I don't have a great answer for it though, because again, it's a process I'm still confused by, and I hope ultimately that the people that get it feel like there's value in it, and they're able to offer it up to their client base as a good value also. It's really about being able to get access to it every year and every quarter, and always having the exclusive rights to that product forever, instead of the case of, you know, when I did do a single store, like, okay, you're going to get 200 boxes and that's it, and never again type of thing. So yeah, it's still a world that I don't understand. I'm just happy that I can put together the cigar.
How far out is it, by the way?
Well, if Abe wanted it, it would be done yesterday, but I told him on a bare minimum, it'll probably be the 1st of June. So I think he's probably going to do this leading into before the trade show. We'll see. I still have to deliver my part, which the cigars have been sitting. I'm just waiting on the bands and the humidors. And the humidors, I decided to create something very unique. And to build one was fairly complicated. Now we have to build 7 more, because we're going to keep the prototype in the factory, and then we have to build 7 perfect replicas of that. I think people will be pleasantly surprised when they see the final product of the humidor. I call it a humidor because that's the main box, but it's technically, it's just a box. You better find some place to put it. Even though we made sure that there was places to put like some type of humidification device, like a Boveda or something inside the box also.
Rusty, many thanks. Let's go to Dejan. Boy, you're freezing again, huh?
It's not so bad. It's not so bad.
Where are you?
I'm in Vienna.
Oh, wow.
I'm in Vienna, but I'm always sitting outside, so you know, outside gets chilly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just have one short question, a little bit different topic. I'm interested. Have you, in the whole career, of making these awesome cigars. Have you ever stumbled across anybody trying to counterfeit your cigars? And do you care about it at all? You know?
Yeah, I mean, I've never seen any, like, per se, but I've heard stories that people have found them, but I've never seen any. I know Fuente has a big problem with it because I've been on the beaches of the Dominican Republic where they've tried to sell me Chateau Fuentes in a glass top box. So I know that there are people out there counterfeiting brands. I don't think Tatuaje is up to a level of being counterfeited yet.
But with the cigar prices rising, do you care?
Oh yeah, I'd absolutely care because I don't want people to have a bad experience with the name on it. If they end up buying it thinking it's real and it ends up being a complete dog rocket, for lack of better words, I would hate for anybody to have to spend that money. I always have an issue with once someone owns a cigar, they can do whatever they want with it once they own it, right? But if a person didn't care for that cigar in their possession and they decided to trade it or to sell it to the next person, you end up potentially, you're opening yourself up to a potential bad experience because maybe that person didn't care for the cigar like you would have cared for it if you were the first person to own it. I've had that same problem with wine where I've actually bought wine thinking I was getting some good wines at great prices. And the next thing you know, I'm getting vinegar in a bottle because somewhere down the line, the wine cellar it was stored in spiked in temperature and boiled the wine. So I end up purchasing some beautifully, old bottles of wine that taste like crap.
Okay.
So I would always recommend if you're going to buy your cigars, care for them, because if you do decide to sell your collection later in the years, just show people that you cared for the product as much as they're going to care for it when they get it. Because there's nothing worse than getting a bad cigar that was uncared for.
Okay. Thanks.
No, you're welcome.
Mr. Hanson, Macy, time for you to chime in.
Well, I thought you were Judge Matthewman in West Palm Beach with that Mr. Hanson. The tone was a little different. Look, they had evidence. I postponed depositions. What are you going to do? You got to do what you got to do. Sometimes the Sumatra wrapper's not good, and you gotta pivot. That's just the way it is. First of all, Mr. Johnson, it is an immense pleasure to meet you. A lot of the reason I'm asking these questions, I just wanted to say hi. So great to meet you. I graduated high school in 2003, and your cigar, wow. I really think of you as kind of the first boutique brand I fell in love. I think it was you, and then I learned about Garmiri, and at one point it was kind of around that time. And so,
well, Paul came way ahead of Tatuaje for sure. Paul Garmiri was something I smoked when I started cutting my teeth with cigars in the early 90s. So great brand, great people too.
They are. His son's great. And I actually consider you like it's like the Nicaraguan Paul Garmirian with tattoos, who's not a political consultant. I mean, it's basically the same guy. But so I really appreciate it. In my cigar smoking journey, I was 18 in 2003. FDA, please. I did start at 15. Literally working at Toys R Us and buying cigars and toys. But anyway, your brand was one of my first loves. I remember earned the old La Gloria Cubana as well. So I put it in just that category of special cigar. Kind of took the journey, like we went to prom together. We grew up. It was just so anyway, that's very meaningful, and I wish you tremendous success.
Thank you.
I personally hope you never sell your brand. I'll say that. Please.
No,
$72.5 million offered. I can't tell you what to do, but please don't.
My brand goes with the family.
Okay, Dave Garofalo says you're going to merge. I didn't believe it, but he's also said some other crazy things that have happened. So anyway, we don't. That prediction is out there.
There's no merger in the future. There's maybe some collaborations together, but no merger. But ultimately, if I were to sell the company to anybody, I would prefer it go to the family, so we could pass it down to the kids that are in the family.
Well, I think
because we have a whole core group of kids that are leaving high school and leaving, just finishing college, that are starting to work for the family business. So it'd be nice for them to carry on with the brand a little bit also.
I hope you do that, and I'm pretty sure I'm not alone in that view. But once again, I've never been offered 72.5 million, so easy for me to say.
Everybody's got their price, right? But the reality is that, and I've had offers, and I will tell you that I've had offers, but it's always been the case of you can buy the brand, but the production has to stay with the family. And that's obviously the big blocking point, because they want to take the production to their factories to use their tobaccos. But ultimately, that's where the brand would suffer. And I just can't. We've always joked between the family that if we're going to sell together. At the same time.
Let's say my questions, I put it in the chat. I don't mean this to be accused. I just think it's and you're an open guy, like you said, there are no hard questions. So I'm just you can take it. And I think you'll give an honest answer. That's why I'm asking. And this, it comes from a spirit of love and not caring for the FDA. I certainly assure you of that. And let me say, all of you, get your written comments submitted. The deadline's in June. Post a comment. I'm going to keep saying this every damn week. Like, people are like, fuck the FDA. Okay, well, post a comment. Do something. Like, I mean.
The manufacturing guidelines that they want to impose are guidelines that should be for medical facilities. They make no sense for cigar manufacturers. Like, there's not even, I think one of the questions that came up was like, if we do pH testing on our cigars. I was like, what? I'm like, no, I don't think there's one cigar company in the world that does pH testing on their cigars, unless I'm missing something.
My thought is that FDA, if they don't want us to be sick, they should make sure, like, they should come in and make sure, like, the processors are doing their job and properly fermenting the tobacco. Like, I would appreciate if the FDA came in and be like, hey, let's make sure they're going slow and low and make sure cigars are good. Let's just not, screw over small factories. And this is the question I have. Sorry. I believe large players, and I will name that, including and especially STG, I don't think they have an interest in fighting the FDA. I believe SACA, others have stated this. They are it's just basic economics. They are dominant players in an industry. Their interest is in crowding out competition and making it an oligopoly. I believe the FDA stuff helps them. And I don't believe there's a true interest in some of the big companies, because I'm not seeing it. I mean, the money's not there.
Ultimately, if you have a very big bank account and you have the ability to maneuver these, potential, things that they're talking about imposing, then I think you're more willing to just kind of go out on your own and do it. But the reality is that's not what the cigar industry is. Maybe you have big companies like SDG or Altadas that have these vast, large portfolios, but also big bank accounts where they can afford everything that's thrown in their direction. That's not the cigar industry. There's going to be a lot of people that get hurt by it if these things come into play. But again, like, there's the silliness that's coming in with the question of, like, how do we ensure that no pests get in the farm? Like, I don't know. Have you ever been to a vineyard and seen deer run through the vineyard and eat grapes and pee on the vines? It happens every day of the week. Like, how is the wine industry preventing this? The reality is, when you're fermenting tobacco, you're cleaning the tobacco. the fermentation process is stripping the tobacco of any potential impurity that was in place in its youth in the farm. And I don't understand why they're trying to impose these medical facility, manufacturing processes on the cigar industry, because it's laughable. But they don't understand what we do every day either. So I could question every drug they put a stamp behind too.
So I really don't think they know that tobacco is fermented. I honestly don't think that they have taken the time, and maybe that's on the industry to educate them. I mean, that's part of, the FDA is not interested in learning. They want to put their heads in the sand and just say tobacco is bad, you're all the same. I mean, we have to, it's like, right, I'm a litigator. We have the burden of showing them, the burden of persuasion. And my thought is anyway, my dream, one day you'll hopefully hear about this crazy lawyer that is making cigars in Colombia. I'm going to be that guy. And
wonderful.
And I'll tell you, there's not one cigar factory in Colombia that can comply with these regulations. It's ridiculous. And
I don't think there's one cigar factory in the world that can comply with it. But again, if you have the big bank accounts, you might be able to afford to implement things like more than others can.
So can I just ask real quick? I'm sorry, I'm jumping, but on responsible marketing, I do want to know my personal view. I've heard some people say, well, how can we go after everyone else? And, but Pete Johnson can have the Monster Series, and why, it's not fair, basically. My view on that is there's a big difference between, I don't know, like a Frank or, what in whatever name, versus
Face Drac,
versus like, Scooby Snacks that looks like, I don't know any adults that like Scooby Snack. That's a cartoon. To me, like, I'm not really into Halloween. I'm wearing a pink Oxford shirt. That's probably not my, I'm the boat shoes guy. But I don't think
this debate comes up a lot, actually. This debate definitely comes up a lot. And the Monster Series, it's adult trick-or-treating.
Yeah, that's okay.
Because
that's my thought.
If I did the Monster Series where I put, childish cartoons on the box, and there was one time where I actually almost did. I ended up putting the imagery of like a cartoon on the inside of the box, so people wouldn't see it, but the end consumer would see it. But again, we go into the whole thought process. There's no kid going into a store looking for a $13 cigar. I get people looking at the brand and saying, well, it's called Monsters. Well, there's other brand names out there that are similar, and I don't think that those are advertising towards kids. But when I look at some of these names that you mentioned, kind of catering to a different crowd, but it goes to the bubblegum vodkas of the world.
Yeah.
Like, how are they allowing that? Because that's definitely going after a certain demographic. Cigars are never about going towards a youth demographic. It's really about pleasing adults who know how to make their choices. And I think when you start getting kind of crazy and kitschy with your packaging and your advertising or whatever you're doing with the promotion of the product, it's really who you advertising to. And I would say most cigar companies, regardless of what they put on the box, are advertising towards the adults. I don't see premium cigars being advertised to kids in any ways. So, but I don't agree with all the crazy names of certain things lately either.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's where the line is myself. I appreciate your really honest and insightful answers. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. It's a tough line, though.
Jose, you wanted to chime in on that. I don't know if on that topic in particular or something that was mentioned before, but.
No, I just wanted to ask Pete one last question. Pete, we saw.
Where in the Dominican with the Fuentes? It was actually in Punta Cana.
Oh no, I've seen that for the last 30 years. But not only, but the brand that has been most faked out in Dominican Republic is by far Cohiba. The Dominicans were so creative, they even made Cohiba, vanilla, cherry, and chocolate. Could you believe that? I've
but
seen
I've seen those same cigars in Mexico too.
Oh yeah, Mexico was famous for that too. And I don't know if you remember that TAA we went into Bahamas in 2007, the Colonial Street.
I wasn't there, but
Okay.
I know the street.
Oh,
But I wasn't there that year.
you know, the funny thing, I was walking down with Benji Menendez, and Benji, we were free that afternoon. He says, "Sobrino, nephew, let's go for a walk." And we started to go shop by shop. I had never seen so many perfect fakes in my life. So in the Bahamas, whoever's doing a great job. No, my last question to you is this.
Yeah.
We saw the growth of 2021 compared to 2020. Then we saw 2022 compared to 2021, where we broke records of 1997, 418 million. That's 456 million in 2022, where we all know that the boom of 97 was only in the States and the boom of the last 3 years has been worldwide. So my question to you, the $64,000 question, when I was young, now it has to be like the 10 billion question. Do you think we will surpass the 430 million cigars this year on imports?
No, I think we'll probably see a dip, but I'm overly cautious in life, and I believe in betting against myself. I think maybe you'll see some growth within certain brands, but not as a market or a shell as a whole for the United States. I think there's a lot of product that's going to be exported to other countries. I think the growth really now is outside the U.S.
Yeah, that's what I've been seeing in the last 3 years, because I think I was with Reinhardt. I was talking the other day on the show. You got to remember the Cubans were doing 170 million. Then they go down to 150. All of a sudden, from 150, they go to 120. From 120, they go to 90. From 90, they went to 70 and 50 something last year. And this year, we don't know. So if you add up all those years, it's hundreds of millions of cigars that were all over the world that right now, their stockpile dry totally. And if you think last year was bad, and I keep telling them, when you see the Habanos admits that is the smallest crop they've done, and they're saying it's 50%, and we all know if a Cuban says it was 50%, you can be sure probably was maybe 30 or 35% of tobacco compared to previous years. So I think we all have a great opportunity. I don't know what it's. I'm betting a couple of bottles of scotch with some friends that we don't hit 435 this year. So I hope to collect some Macallan's 21. Oh, good to see you, Pete.
It's a good bet. I think you'll win. I really don't see. I think right now a lot of people are catching up, and you might see for the first 6 months numbers increasing, but I question whether or not we're going to see that growth continue domestically. I think a lot of that growth is overseas for a lot of manufacturers right now.
You know what scares me a lot when I go to these sites, which I'm not going to mention, and I see brands at 20% off, 25% off, 30% off. Big question mark for me, but this is Reinhardt's show, and you're the guest tonight. So,
I agree. I watch it every day. I worry the same way you do, because I want the culture to remain strong, but these numbers are not sustainable. I mean, it'd be nice to see an increase in the cigar industry for the next 20 years, but it's not the reality. There's going to take a dip. Let's just hope we don't dip as bad. And I don't think we would. We'll never dip as bad as we did during the boom of the 90s, because the boom of the 90s, it was just because people were coming into the industry to try to make a bunch of money, and they would make a quick buck and they would leave. And before you knew it, there was thousands of different cigar brands on the shelf that no one could sell because they were crappy cigars. So I don't believe that is the case nowadays. I think that I think everybody's up their game, and I hate using the word game because it's a bad word to use in the case of this, but I think everybody's up their quality to where I think the people that are smoking now enjoying premium cigars are going to continue enjoying premium cigars over the next several years. They might just buy less, or they might go into a shop and buy a few lesser expensive cigars compared to the more expensive cigars from them before. We'll see. We don't even know where the economy is going in the United States, so it's hard to say where we're going to end up.
One last thing, and this is from my good friend Reinhardt. Reinhardt, I think one of these days you should have a panel where Pete's on it, George Brightman, maybe myself and somebody else. And let's go back to memory lane of 1996, 1997, and see what happens maybe after PCA and Dortmund to see where we are. I think that discussion might be very, very interesting. I'll be quiet for the rest of the night. Thank you.
Jose, well, always a pleasure, and I'm sure George will love the idea as well. So, Pete, if you were to accept that invitation,
oh, absolutely,
here it is. Well,
anytime I can talk with George and Jose, it's a good day.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. And it's been a tremendous pleasure, Pete, to have the opportunity to sit down with you again and have a chat. So thanks
for having me.
No,
Thank
absolutely. Last time we did this in the early days of the pandemic, I asked you where in the song that is your career you saw yourself, and you said, well, in the guitar solo somewhere. Well, hopefully in a Highway to Hell kind of solo. And you know, when you're celebrating important anniversaries, you tend to look back, yet at the same time it's also kind of a time to look ahead into the future. Where do you see yourself at the moment, and where do you see yourself going?
Well, I think I'm still in that guitar solo, and it's just a really long guitar solo. At this point in the career of 20 years of doing my own brand and 30 years in the business, I want to sit in that solo for a little while longer. Never want to get to the finale. I never want to get to the end. So maybe in 5 years, if I'm still in the solo, it means the international market has boomed for us, and we're still rolling good cigars, and the family's doing healthy, and we have the new generation coming into the family working. Like again, Jaime's son, his first priority when he came from Cuba was to go to college, and now he's full-time in the factory. And honestly, he's been very helpful for me because he's really watching over my product very carefully. And because of my lack of trips to Nicaragua compared to the old days, he's been able to be my eyes and ears every day for new projects and new items that I'm working on. So I want to see this next generation of the Garcia family conquer also.
Beautiful.
Let's we had our 20 years. Let's give them their 22.
Fabulous. Pete, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much. I wish you continued success. I wish you a super long guitar solo, and keep rocking. People really appreciate it and love listening. So thanks for everything you do, and all the very best. I can't wait to see you in July, and enjoy a great Tatuaje cigar with you then.
I have to say one shout out because I just finally saw him in the room. Laurent, I just want to say hello. I'll see you soon. Love you. Take care of yourself.
Hi, Pete. Nice to meet you. Nice to see you tonight. Nice to see you guys.
Good to have
Reinhardt.
you. Blessings to you.
Thank you. Thank you again for everything. And thanks for keeping the community strong and supporting what us brand owners do every day of the week. So thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you, man. It's a pleasure and a privilege. And if there's one thing ever that I can disagree with the professor and disagree with Jose, It's not my show, it's everybody's show. This is for all the cigar family and for the community, and it's because of everybody joining us, watching, and willing to take precious time out of your days to listen to all of this, and in particular people like yourself, Pete, who not only work their ass off every single day in the industry to provide people with incredible cigar experiences, but then also take the time to sit here with me and with everybody and have a chat. It's greatly appreciated.
No, you're welcome. I'm glad to do it. I'm
Thanks,
glad to be
joining.
here for 30 years now. So
yeah. On to the next 30.
This is a very embracing industry. And once the great people that came before me and the great people that have passed, like Carlos Sr. and Jose Orlando, when they embraced me back in my early years, they really kind of drove a nail into me to stay here. And I'm just happy to follow in their footsteps and thankful that I had people mentor me like that. And, guys like Carlito and George Padron and Robbie Levin from Ashton. These are people that I look up to every day. And it's very strange for me to be in rooms with them where they look at me as a peer because I still look up to them. So just happy to be in the room.
I hear you, but it's well deserved, and honor to those when honor is due, and it goes to all of them. And it's wonderful to see that there is the old generation and the young generation coming together, and it always takes both, right? The old guys willing to share and to give and bring new blood into the industry, and the young folks to listen and to appreciate and to shut up and learn and try to follow the footsteps.
Yeah, when you're younger, don't come in thinking that you know everything, because trust me, you don't know everything. I'm still learning every day of the week, but I will say this, and I've said this a lot lately. There was a gap there was a generational gap in our industry for the last several years, and over the last couple, you're finally starting to see that gap be bridged, and you're seeing Christian Eiroa's kids start working in the industry. You're seeing the Padron kids starting to work in the industry. You're seeing the Garcia's kids work in the industry. So you have these families that are out there making quality cigars, that are having family members. Carlito's kid is now full-time with the company, just graduated college. You're seeing that gap be bridged, and it's a blessing for anybody that really follows these family-owned companies, because they know there's a future for those brands that they've loved for so long.
Amen.
Yeah, and a good future too.
Yeah. Pete Johnson, thank you so much for taking the time joining us at the Light 'em Up Lounge.
You're welcome, man. Thank you.
I wish all of you a great rest of your day. Please join us again next week, same time, same station. Until then, light 'em up. Goodbye, everybody. Many thanks.
Peace.
Right.
Thank you. Great show.
What a great show, Reinhardt. Great